the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the Queen, the public weal, peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Good morning. The meeting of the Senate of Jamaica for Friday, July 23rd, 2021 is now called to order. Statements by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the Senate today are the following. The Constitution, Section 47.5, Clerk of the Senate Resolution 2021, under the Constitution of Jamaica. Ministry Paper Number 48 of 2021, and Annual Report on Audited Financial Statements of the Agro-Investment Corporation for the year 2015-2016. Ministry Paper Number 49 of 2021, an annual report of the Students' Loan Bureau for the year 2016-2017. Ministry Paper Number 50 of 2021, entitled Resolution adopted by the Annual Labour Conference of the International Labour Organization for the year 2021. Ministry Papers Number 51, 52, 53, 54, and 55 respectively, and the orders and resolutions with regard to the Lower Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, the Denham Town Community Zone Social Intervention, July 16, 2021, the Greenwich Town Community Zone Social Intervention, July 16, 2021, the August Town Community Zone Social Intervention, July 16, 2021, the Mount Salem Community Zone Social Intervention, dated September 1, 2017 to July 15, 2021, and the Norwood Community Zone Social Intervention, dated July 16, 2021, respectively. Annual reports of the Runaway Bay Water Company Limited for the years 2014 to 2016 and 2016 to 2017. The Planning Institute of Jamaica Economic and Social Survey of Jamaica 2020. The Microcredit Fees Regulations 2021 and its resolution. The Microcredit License Form of Application Regulations 2021 and its resolution. The Microcredit Requirements for Grant of License Regulations 2021 and its resolution. And those three come under the Microcredit Act. The Information Commissioner, Emoluments and Terms and Other Conditions of Service Resolution under the Data Protection Act, and the Disabilities Regulations 2021 under the Disabilities Act.
Bills brought from the Honorable House of Representatives.
The following is a message from the Speaker of the House of Representatives to the Honorable Senate. I have the honor to advise the Honorable Senate that on the 21st day of July 2021, a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Judicature, Applicate Jurisdiction Act and a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Judicature Parish Courts Act were passed in the House of Representatives. Signed, Marisa Dalrymple Philibert MP, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Mr. President, I seek both your permission to speak from a seat not my own, and I signify my willingness to take charge of the bills.
A bill shortly entitled the Judicature Appellate Jurisdiction Amendment Act 2021 read the first time, and a bill entitled the Judicature Parish Courts Amendment Act 2021 read the first time.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice of a second reading of the bill.
Petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally.
I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the Senate, I will move the following. The Constitution of Jamaica. Whereas Section 47 of the Constitution of Jamaica, hereinafter referred to as the Constitution, refers to the office of the Clerk of the Senate, and whereas subsection 3 of Section 47 of the Constitution provides that subject to the provision of subsection 5 of that section, the clerk shall, unless the clerk sooner resigns office, hold office until the clerk attains the age of 65 years or such later age as may, in any particular case, be prescribed by the Commission appointed under subsection 7 of that section, and whereas Section 47(5) of the Constitution provides that the clerk shall be removed from office by the Governor-General if, but shall not be so removed unless the House, by a resolution which has received the affirmative vote of not less than 2/3 of all members thereof, has resolved that the clerk ought to be so removed for inability to discharge the functions of the office, whether arising from infirmity of body or mind or any other cause, or for misbehavior. And whereas Section 47(14) of the Constitution provides that where one person is appointed to the offices of Clerk of the Senate and Clerk of the House of Representatives, the provisions of Section 47 shall apply in relation to that person in respect of each office separately. Now therefore be it resolved that this House allows the resolution may be cited as the Constitution Section 47(5), Clerk of the Senate Resolution 2021, and 2, the Clerk of the Senate ought to be removed from office for inability to discharge the functions of the office arising from infirmity. Mr. President, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion. Mr. President, I beg to also give notice at the next meeting of the Senate, I will move the following. 1, the Microcredit Fees and Regulations 2021 Resolution. Whereas Section 59 of the Microcredit Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the regulatory authority, with the approval of the Minister, make rules for the operation of microcredit institutions. And whereas subsection 3 of Section 59 of the Act provides that rules made under subsection 1 of the section shall be subject to affirmative resolution, and whereas the regulatory authority, with the approval of the Minister responsible for finance on the 19th day of July 2021, made the microcredit license form of application rules 2021, and whereas it is desirable that the microcredit license form of application rules 2021 be affirmed, now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. This resolution may be cited as the Microcredit License Form of Application Rules 2021 Resolution. The Microcredit License Form of Application Rules 2021 is hereby affirmed. 2. The Microcredit License Form of Application Regulations 2021 Resolution. Whereas Section 58 of the Microcredit Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides that the regulatory authority, with the approval of the Minister, make regulations providing for such matters as may be necessary or expedient for the purposes of the Act. And whereas subsection 3 of Section 58 of the Act provides that regulations made under subsection 1 of the section shall be subject to affirmative resolution, and whereas the regulatory authority, with the approval of the Minister responsible for finance on the 19th day of July 2021, made the microcredit fees regulations 2021, and whereas it is desirable that the microcredit fees regulations 21 be affirmed, now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. The resolution may be cited as the microcredit fees regulations 2021. The microcredit fees regulations 2021 is hereby affirmed. The microcredit requirements for grant of license regulations 2021 resolution. Whereas Section 58 of the Microcredit Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides the regulatory authority, with the approval of the Minister, make regulations providing for such matters as may be necessary or expedient for the purposes of the Act. And whereas subsection 3 of Section 58 of the Act provides that regulations under subsection 1 of the section shall be subject to affirmative resolution. And whereas the regulatory authority, with the approval of the Minister responsible for finance on the 19th day of July 2021, made the microcredit requirements for grant of license regulations. And whereas it is desirable that the microcredit requirements for grant of license regulations 2021 be affirmed. Now therefore be it resolved by this Honourable House as follows. The resolution may be cited as the microcredit requirements for grant of license regulations 2021 resolution. 2, the microcredit requirements for grant of license regulations 2021 is hereby affirmed. Mr. President, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motions.
Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to the sittings of the Senate. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the Senate first obtained. Public business.
Mr. President, it is intended to start with the State of the Nation contributions. I will invite members Floyd Morris and Senator Campbell Rodriguez to proceed.
Senator Morris, just give me a moment. Minister, it's recommended that we do the motion first.
If that is a feeling on both sides of the Senate, no issues, Mr. President. I would just ask that you put the matter to a vote. The motion, notice of which I gave earlier, to vote, Mr. President.
Sorry.
Mr. President. Mr. President, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
The question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the Minister to take the motion, notice of which was given earlier. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Minister?
Mr. President, it's not intended to debate the motion. I ask that the motion be approved.
The question is that the motion, notice of which was given earlier, be approved. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
Just a point of order. Does that motion require a two-thirds majority, and therefore a vice vote will be needed?
Thank you very much, Senator Brown, for your guidance. Proceed, Madam Clerk. In respect to what had proceeded earlier, I'd ask that the vote which was taken, that we withdraw that vote, and we do it in the way that is required. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Proceed, Madam Clerk.
Senator Allen?
Yes.
Senator Braham?
Yes.
Senator Bunting? Aye. Senator Brown? Aye. Senator Campbell? Aye. Senator Campbell Rodriguez?
Yes.
Senator Crawford? Senator Fraser Beans? Aye. Senator Gale? Aye. Senator Golding Campbell? Aye. Senator Hill? Senator Johnson Smith? Senator Longmore? Aye. Senator Morris? Senator Floyd Morris? Senator Dr. Floyd Morris? Senator Gabriel Morris? Aye. Senator Samuda? Aye. Senator Scott Motley? Aye. Senator Webby? Senator Williams? The Deputy President who is sitting in for the President?
Aye.
The President who is absent. Okay, thank you.
All right, we have that 15 ayes, 6 persons absent, and there are no noes. So the motion is approved. Thank you, Senators.
Mr. President, I mentioned earlier it is intended to continue the State of the Nation debate. We will proceed with Senator Dr. Floyd Morris and Senator Campbell Rodriguez in that order, not because it is indeed Senator Morris's birthday, but because that is the order of things. So I would also like to use the opportunity just to extend the heartiest birthday wishes to Senator Morris. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Morris, you may proceed. And it's not everything that you need to say today, no, Senator Morris.
Pardon me, Mr. President.
Not everything that you need to say. Right? But we just.
Yes,
wish you a happy birthday.
I certainly will take guidance from you, Senator Cavan-Gill. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Mr. President. Let me take this opportunity to express profound gratitude to the members of the Senate for their continued support, and I have to give thanks to the Almighty for sparing my life to be on earth for the 52nd year of my life. And I am deeply grateful to the guidance of my mother and my darling wife, who is unavoidably absent today. She just started a new job, so she couldn't be here to give support. But I know that she said later will be greater. Mr. President, I want to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Peter Phillips for reappointing me to the Senate for a 5th term, and also to thank Mr. Mark Golding for the confidence that he has reposed in me in my continuation in this August body. And as I have indicated, Mr. President, I have enjoyed tremendous friendship with individuals across the aisle, and I want to express my gratitude to the support from senators and also to members of staff of the Parliament. I've decided to caption my presentation today, Education for Transformation and Empowerment, recognizing the fact that this is the state of the nation, and in the state of the nation we are required to examine various issues of national importance, and it is an opportunity given to each and every member of the Senate to articulate their position and their views on this particular issue. And I want to start out by asking the question, what is the state of the nation today? Because we are speaking about 2021. And we see in 2021 where we have a problem with a continuous problem with crime and violence. We have a continuous problem with poverty. We have a problem in terms of the continued COVID-19 pandemic. We have a problem with the abuse of vulnerable citizens within our country. We have a problem with low productivity in our country. And Mr. President, as I examine these issues that face the nation, the million-dollar question is, how do we correct this decrepit state of our nation? Mr. President, I put to the members of this august body that education and more education has to be the fundamental plank that will drive the transformation and empowerment of our people. You know, Mr. President, when you look at the data in terms of what is happening in terms of crime and violence, Senator Samuda would be more current with the murder rate. Yesterday I got the news that there were 788 individuals who were murdered as of this week, and we are at the midpoint of the year. We got news a few weeks ago that the 2019 poverty rate was 11%. The fact of the matter is that in light of the COVID pandemic, that would have been increased significantly because the poverty rate was for 2019 and not measured for 2020-21. And we have to make sure that we are clear where that is concerned. And then we listen to the news and we hear of the exponential growth in terms of abuse of our children, our senior citizens, and persons with disabilities. We have individuals in the society who seem to have gone totally crazy in terms of how they treat and relate to the most vulnerable. And so, Mr. President, we have to find a way in order to curb and stem these challenges that are eating out the heart and soul of our nation. And I believe that if we put the requisite resources in terms of education, we are likely to get significantly better results. Mr. President, in 2001, I joined the Ministry of Labor and Social Security as the Minister of State. And at that time, I was charged with the responsibility of introducing the PATH program, the Program of Advancement through Health and Education. And when we conceptualized the PATH program, it was designed primarily to break the intergenerational cycle of poverty through two fundamental national developmental indicators, that of education and health care. And Mr. President, at the time, we targeted 236,000 individuals for the PATH program. Fast forward to 2021, and when I look at the data, Senator Bunting, there are 331,000 individuals on the PATH program, an increase of over 45% over the original targeted figure. And it caused me to ask the question, is PATH achieving its stated and intended objective, which is to break the intergenerational cycle of poverty? And I say absolutely not, because we should be seeing a reduction, Senator Samuda, in terms of the number of people on PATH if we were making any progress. But instead, we are seeing an increase in the number of individuals on the PATH program. And something is fundamentally wrong. And I have always argued in this August body that a part of the problem that we are having with the program, because I worked with the intricacies of that program and I understand it very well. The case management of the program that should be done by social workers is woefully inadequate. Woefully inadequate. We have about 200 social workers on the program when we should have about 1,000 social workers. And because of the inadequacy, we don't have the visitations taking place to beneficiaries and the support to make sure that those beneficiaries are doing what they are supposed to do. And so we end up having this problem where we're not making the sort of headways under the PATH program. Mr. President, one of the things that I noted from the data is that there are about 4,400 and odd individuals who are getting or have received the education grant to go to tertiary institution under the PATH program. In 2007, we started that scholarship initiative to make sure that beneficiaries get support to study at the tertiary level of the education system. And I think it was about $100 million that we started that initiative with at the time. And Mr. President, I am happy that such an initiative was put in place, but we need to get some data. We need to get some information now as to how many children who are on the PATH program have transitioned into the tertiary level, because it's at the tertiary level that you're gonna see the professionalization of these individuals, and you can say, yes, the intergenerational cycle of poverty is being broken. Mr. President, I want to put two suggestions on the table where the PATH program is concerned, because I believe that we need to see a massive injection of social workers on the PATH program, up to 1,000 individuals that we need to get on the PATH program. Because as I've stated before in other debates, that when you have social workers on an initiative like PATH, it also assists Senator Samuda with your crime-fighting initiative. And we also need to have an established database of all the social workers that are in the government system, to make sure that we are able to have greater collaboration, intergovernmental agency collaboration, where the PATH is concerned and social work program as a whole is concerned, so that, support can be given to the respective beneficiaries in the field. And Mr. President, I want to also suggest that the government needs to tap into the retired teachers across this island, to mobilize them to assist children who are on the PATH program and in vulnerable communities. Because we need to ensure that these children are getting the requisite support in terms of their education. Because if we are going to transform the society, education has to play a fundamental role. Mr. President, as I examine the poverty data, I make a connection to the population of persons with disabilities. And I say, Senator Samuda, that the only way we are going to have a significant dent in the poverty rate of our country is if we are able to integrate, to include persons with disabilities in the mainstream of society. Because the socio-cultural rigidities of our society are of such that it places tremendous pressure on the population of persons with disabilities. So you find that they are excluded from educational institution. You find that they are isolated from health care. You find that these individuals experience negative attitudes from individuals within their communities, and they don't have access to public transportation. So they are confined to a life of perpetual poverty. Mr. President, in 2014, the Portia Simpson Miller administration passed the Disabilities Act. And we, from the community of persons with disabilities, were eagerly anticipating its implementation. 7 years have elapsed, and I'm very happy, Mr. President, that the regulations to support the act has finally been tabled in the Parliament. And I want to say that I spoke with Minister Samuda, that's not Matthew, Carl, And he told me that one of the priorities that he has for the Ministry of Labor and Social Security is to make sure that the Disabilities Act is implemented. And I want to express my appreciation to him for pushing the envelope and getting the regulations in the Parliament. But I want to say to Minister, I am prepared to work with you in terms of the implementation. But I want to hear now the appointed day for the legislation to come into effect, to be announced. Because whilst the regulation is tabled in the Parliament, it is a progressive step. But I want us to move now where the legislation is being implemented to bring persons with disabilities in the mainstream of Jamaican society, because we want to use the legislation to break the intergenerational cycle of poverty and empower our people. Mr. President, you know, next week we are having a major conference in the Caribbean. It's a hybrid, but we are anchoring from Jamaica. And the focus is on the establishment of specific legislation to protect the rights and dignity of persons with disabilities. Because the aim is to ensure that we build up a strong disability jurisprudence within the Caribbean. Today, out of the 15 CARICOM countries, 6 have established such legislation, and that would include Jamaica. And we want to make sure that all the countries within the regions establish this piece of legislation. But we want to take it much further than that, because persons with disabilities are extremely poor individuals. And we would want to see the Caribbean Court of Justice being brought to the forefront in terms of the implementation of and enforcement of these legislation when they come into force. Persons with disabilities won't have money to travel to the UK to get their appeals heard in the Privy Council. So we wanted to bring the matter closer home. And as I prepared my presentation, I said to myself, what a progressive step the government of Jamaica would make if it took the decision to establish the CCJ as a final court of appeal in Jamaica. I want to tell you, Senator Samuda, Mr. President, I am here now in the Senate. I can't speak about what will happen in another year or 2 or 3 from now. What I can speak about the fact that I am here now. And I am prepared to guarantee you that if it is that you are prepared to go the route of the CCJ and to take that constitutional motion in the Senate, you have the 14th vote. You have the 14th vote from me, because I'm a firm believer in the CCJ. You have 49 in the House of Representatives. You have 49 in the House of Representatives, more than the 2/3 that is required down there. So the ball is in the government's court now to take a decision and to act where the final appellate court of Jamaica is concerned. And I strongly support that move to go towards the Caribbean Court of Justice, because I believe that if we have the Caribbean Court of Justice, it will be beneficial to persons with disabilities. I take note, Senator Golden Campbell, of an article that was written in the Observer in 2018 by my very good friend and your father, Bruce Golding, which he sought to assess the CCJ since its inception. And your father has a very fine mind. I can tell you that because, you know, he was one of my interviewees for my PhD thesis. And I can tell you he has a fabulous mind. And as I read the article, I happened to understand and believe in what he was saying, because he said that when you look at the judgment from the CCJ that he analyzed, they were as solid as anywhere else that you can find. Solid as anywhere else you can find. And you know, I take real comfort in that sort of analysis. So we have no reason to hesitate. Now it is for us to step forward, step boldly as we go into the 21st century and establish the CCJ as the final appellate court in Jamaica, because it will benefit persons with disabilities. Mr. President, you know, the National Insurance Scheme was set up in 1966 as a part of the social protection mechanism to eliminate and to eradicate poverty and to ensure that our workers, upon retiring, have some form of savings that they can look forward to. And I must say that the NIS is a very good and a very prudent scheme that was established. In 1990, the then Minister of Labor and Social Security, Portia Simpson Miller, decided that she was going to establish that fund of $1.5 billion to grow the investment for the National Insurance Scheme. So the National Insurance Fund came into effect with that $1.5 billion, and a board was set up to manage the funds. And today, Mr. President, we have some $120 billion in the National Insurance Fund. But whilst we have resources in the fund, there are challenges with the NIS contribution. And I see and took note of measures that were put in place earlier this year by the government to correct some of those problems in terms of contributions. But one of the questions that I asked Senator Lambert is, are the payments to our pensioners at this time adequate for our pensioners? In light of what I've heard from the Capri study, where our most vulnerable are not accessing the intended benefits under the government COVID assistance program, and the various challenges that people are having out there in terms of the increases in food prices from week to week. We have to do something for the pensioners. We have to do something for the pensioners. And I want to make an appeal to the government to make sure that they look again at the amounts, the rates that are being paid to the pensioners with the intent of giving these individuals an increase. I take note and acknowledge the fact that you have introduced the social program for the elderly, and the commendations are in order. But we have to make sure, Mr. President, that we don't have our pensioners falling behind because of the extent of inflationary pressures that are taking place within the economy. And we need to look at that. And I want to suggest, Mr. President, that we're going to have to look seriously at how it is that we invest the funds from the NIF. We're talking about $120 billion that are there in various instruments. We have to make sure that we invest it in such a way that it grows the economy, it stimulates employment, and again it will benefit the NIF, because you're talking about the employment of individuals who will make contribution to the scheme and continue to grow the fund. So we have to look at some more strategic investments in terms of the NIF in order to facilitate national development. Mr. President, there is an urgent need. There's an urgent need for a productivity revolution in our country. Because, Mr. President, if we are going to come out of this spiral of poverty that we have, productivity has to play a major role. The National Productivity Center indicated from a study conducted in 2020 that productivity during the COVID year fell by approximately 5.3%. And they are positive that this is a continuation of the trend of about 2.5% annually for the past 20 years. So you can understand, Mr. President, why it is that we are experiencing the levels of poverty that we have in our society. Productivity is down, but Senator Scott Montley, gambling is up. Productivity is down, but crime and violence is up. Productivity is down, and abuse of our children and the most vulnerable in the society is up. Mr. President, we are having a serious productivity problem. We are having a serious productivity problem. And I believe that if we are going to correct this productivity problem, the perfect antidote to low productivity is greater investment in modern technology and also in education. Mr. President, my colleague and friend, Professor Denzel Williams, wrote an article a couple weeks ago in which he pointed out that there was, out of every 10 graduates from our high schools, only two dege individuals on average move and transition to the tertiary level?
Repeat.
2 out of 10 transition to the tertiary level. Our competitors to the north, in America, in Canada, in the UK.
5 more hours. Minister, go ahead.
Mr. President, I ask that sufficient time be granted for the Speaker to complete his presentation.
You have heard the question, members? Aye. Those in favor? Aye. Senator Morris.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'll endeavor to finish in a reasonable time for members to continue. Mr. President, our competitors to the north, 7 out of 10 from high school make the transition to tertiary institutions. So you can understand, Mr. President, that these countries are going to be ahead of us in terms of their productivity rate because they are investing in greater levels of education. And I want to strongly suggest, Mr. President, that we have to inject more resources in education to facilitate the productivity resolution and the transformation and empowerment of our people. And I want to suggest, a few weeks ago, my colleague, spokesperson on finance, Julian Robinson, suggested that some funds be taken from the dormant accounts to assist with stimulating the small business sector. And I want to also suggest, Mr. President, that we look seriously at taking some of those funds because it's $70 billion that is there in those dormant accounts. And if we can take some of those funds to inject in the education sector to buy more tablets for needy children in the education system, to assist with the early childhood education sector, and also to assist with tertiary institutions. Because, Mr. President, you know, last year at the University of the West Indies alone, 3,000 students were not deregistered? Well, they were not deregistered, but they never registered last academic year. The year before, we had 19,000 students thereabout, and currently we have just over 16,000. 3,000 students never registered. Absolutely not. They just never registered because they are in the system and they have had to take a leave of absence because of the unavailability of financial resources. And all of that is contributing to the pressures that the tertiary institutions are experiencing. And I believe that we can give a lifeline to these institutions by injecting some of these fees in education, because when you invest in education, you know, you are bound to get the returns later on in life. So it's not going to be a wasted investment. So I want to make that suggestion. Mr. President, I want to point out something that is disturbing to me. And if it is that we are going to empower and transform the lives of our people through education, when they get education, they must come out and they must get jobs, right, Senator Crawford? And so we can't have a situation where, when you look across Jamaica, you see a lot of individuals from Southeast Asia working in different sectors of the economy. And when we check on the work permit mechanism in the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, there needs to be a thorough examination of what is taking place there. It cannot be that we are having all of these individuals coming in and we can't give proper account for their employment in our country. And I want to also strongly suggest that we have a massive computerization program for the work permit mechanism in the ministry, so that we can document every single individual that is coming in to work. And we must also have a digital footprint so that anybody who go inside the system and check the system also you can know, because what we want to do is to also monitor and ensure that no hanky-panky, Senator Scott Batley, no hanky-panky is taking place. So,
No.
not at all.
As resistant,
not at all.
As resistant
Not
to
at
such
all.
activities.
Not at all. Mr. President, we have to make sure that, I get a number of complaints. From our citizens about problems that they are having across the island. They believe that they are being pushed out because of individuals who they believe coming from Southeast Asia to work in areas where we have skilled individuals to work. And so we have to make sure that we correct that. Mr. President, quickly I want to point out about the overseas employment program, because that has been a major mechanism that has been used by Jamaicans to empower themselves, to transform their lives, to send their children to school. I remember our Minister Simpson Miller, Senator Lambert, when she was Minister of Labor and Social Security, used to beat the pavements in the United States and in Canada to make sure that we get more jobs in terms of the hotel and the farm work program. And I am very happy whenever I teach in a class at the university and I talk to some of the students that I see come from non-traditional schools in rural Jamaica. I always engage them because I am very happy to see those schools sending students to the university.
Like the Great Westwood High School?
Well, that's a traditional. That's a traditional.
Okay.
But, one of the things that they say to me is that their mommy and their daddy are on the farm and the hotel workers program overseas. And they are sending them to school, to university, because they want them to break the cycle of poverty in their family. And I'm very much heartened at that approach of those individuals on the farm and hotel workers program. But one of the things that I have taken note of in having some discussion with some of the farm workers and the hotel workers is that after they work on the farm overseas and they come back here, they collect the money that they repatriate to the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, Senator Gale, and they take those monies and they will expand their homes, or they will send do I expand a business or something like that? But one of the things that I note that is not happening is very few of them are required to make a contribution to the NIS and the NHT for their pension and to get some housing assistance down the road. And I want to strongly suggest that as a part of the reform measures to the overseas program, and I'm telling Minister Samuda, who is my good friend, don't go down that pathway which he said that he was going to ask members of parliament to select farm workers. Members of parliament don't know, some of them don't even know
what is a farm.
What is a farm? They don't even know how to turn on a pipe to irrigate a farm, much more. Well, he's not a member of parliament.
Okay, members, Senator Gale, please don't interrupt Senator Morris.
Thank you very much,
I don't want him to go too long in the time.
I'm winding down. I'm winding down. So, Mr. President, you know, I want to strongly suggest that as a part of the overseas employment program, we make sure that the hotel workers and the farm workers, from that pool of funds that they repatriate to Jamaica every year, they register themselves as self-employed workers and make contribution to the NHT and the NIS so that they are able to get a little pension when they retire and also to be able to get some housing assistance from the National Housing Trust. Because we're talking about breaking the intergenerational cycle of poverty and also transforming and empowering our people. And I believe that we have to make sure that we put in place those mechanisms. If it is that they are going to make a contribution to the NIS, for example, as a self-employee, it's about $12,000 a year. $12,000 a year, $250 a week. Right? So that Jamaican. So and when they come back here, they carry significantly more resources than that. So, you know, I strongly believe that that is something we need to execute. Mr. President, I have outlined to you a number of issues and challenges confronting our nation. I have cited the fact that as a nation we have a serious crime problem. We have a serious problem with poverty. We have a serious problem in terms of the abuse of our vulnerable citizens. We have a serious problem in terms of the levels of productivity in our country. But I believe that with the requisite investment in education and with proper management of our resources, existing resources, we can see a significant transformation and empowerment of our Jamaican people. I stand here today as a living testimony to that experience, because as the son of an ordinary Jamaican who got blind at age 20, and because my mother riveted in my head that, look, the only way you are going to survive and get out of poverty is by taking your education seriously, I made sure that I never looked to the left nor to the right when it came on to getting my education. Senator Bunting, I remember one night going whilst I was going to Michael Evening College, it rained cats and dogs. All of my friends had left and gone home at 9:30 when my brother was unable to come for me. I was there alone with the security, and I decided that I was going to brave the weather and go outside. When I went and reached on Moresca Road, water was up by my knees. And I remembered in my sighted years that the middle of the road is generally higher than the sides. So I used my white cane and navigated and found my way into the middle of the road. And I tiptoed Senator Gale from Moresca Road straight into Cross Road to catch my bus to go to Vineyard Town. A lot of people would say, why make such a sacrifice and as a blind person and put your life at risk? But I had a mission. I had a mission to accomplish. And that mission was to see a significant transformation in my life. And the only way that could be accomplished is through education. And I want to commend to every single Jamaican that we have challenges and we have difficulties, but we can overcome them. And I want to put it to the government to make sure that it utilizes in an efficacious manner the resources that we have to transform and empower the lives of persons with disabilities. Our citizens. I talk about persons with disabilities so much. Empower and transform the lives of our citizens. And the best means of doing so is through education. May it please you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Morris. Senator Campbell Rodriguez.
As I stand here today, thank you, Senator Crawford, a humble servant of Jamaica, I would like to give God thanks for sparing my life to be able to serve. I also want to thank the Prime Minister of this beautiful country, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, for this opportunity where I get to work on matters which augur well for the people of this vibrant and amazing nation. It is also important for me to thank my family for their love and support as I traversed the journey which led to these chambers. Mrs. Plummer, big up yourself. You have been nothing short of a phenomenal mother who made sure I was aware of my own capacity and that to whom much is given, much is expected. Mr. Campbell, thank you for giving me life and love. Alexandria and Amanda, you young ladies act as a guiding light to my every decision, and I am more than honored to be your mother. Mr. Rodriguez, what does one say about a man who gives it all to ensure that Natalie can thrive and serve her country? To the staff here at Gordon House, thank you for all the guidance and responsiveness. To my colleague senators on the other side, thanks for keeping me aware. And to my colleague senators on this side who have welcomed me with open arms and who forced me to be the best version of myself in this House, thank you. Mr. President, When I was reminded of the fact that this is the season for State of the Nation presentations, I initially became concerned because it is often said that it is easier to give these speeches when one is in opposition. But, Mr. President, I quickly realized the foolish nature of my thoughts as I stand here on the side of a government that, while not perfect, is doing a sterling job at helping Jamaica to not just build back stronger, but also to get back on the path of becoming her best self. Once I had that settled in my mind, I then moved forward, Mr. President, with the business of examining the state of the young and gender issues in Jamaica. Mr. President, as a human being, I have this strong desire to see the human race continue to grow and flourish, especially right here in Jamaica. For this to happen, we must not only keep reproducing, but also ensure that our children and young people are able to be their best selves at home, at school, at church, at play, as a matter of fact, anywhere they choose to be. What do I mean when I say best selves? Am I referring to having material possessions such as video games and laptops and fancy toys? There's a place for all that, but when I say best self with regard to our children, I'm referring to them being safe, self-assured, having access to health care, education, and their general physical safety. The last few weeks and months have been hard for our children, and not just because they're missing out on so much of what makes a childhood due to this pandemic. Just this week, we mourned the 4-year-old boy who was allegedly beaten to death by his stepfather. We have the menace of men from all walks of society abusing our vulnerable youngsters. We have mothers protecting abusers. It has not been a bed of roses for our children and young people, and that is the reason new measures are being put in place, all while old measures are being revamped. It has been difficult and heart-wrenching and anger-inducing to hear the news of what has been taking place. Mr. President, I know the easy response after the feelings of emotion is to blame the government. Do not get me wrong. The government, as does any and every government, has a major role to play in protecting all citizens, including children. But I stand strong in saying that as parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents, godparents, neighbors, and friends, we all must take responsibility for what has been happening. As women, we must be mindful of the men we let into our lives and that of our children. As parents, we must not allow the induced fear of fire, brimstone, and damnation to let us leave our children vulnerable while they learn the word of the gospel. We must not facilitate blind faith. I urge all Jamaicans to keep in mind the following scriptures. Ephesians 5 verse 11 says, "Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them." Psalm 82 verse 4 says, "Rescue the weak and the needy, deliver them from the hand of the wicked." What clearer messages other than the word of the Lord do we need to understand? That we are not to protect anyone who molests our children and youth. We must not lay our girls and boys carelessly exposed to evil elements. It does not matter how much power we think the abuser has, whether it be a church leader, a politician, a doctor, lawyer, teacher. No one should be allowed to escape the law for abusing our most vulnerable. Safeguards must be put in place by us as caregivers to shield our children from evil and wickedness. Mr. President, as mentioned, the government has a role along with citizens, and that is why I am proud to remind us of some of the plans and initiatives already announced by Minister Williams less than 2 weeks ago. The plans are part of reforms to the child protection ecosystem in Jamaica. 1. A helpline for children is to be launched in early September. The phones will be manned 24 hours per day by child care professionals. The number to be called will be 211. The CPFSA and the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information have developed a policy to accelerate family-type placement of children aged 0 to 3 years old. Legislation is being drafted to amend the Child Care and Protection Act. Section 24, which we know is problematic, will finally be addressed. The Adoption Act of 1958 will be repealed and replaced. Work is being undertaken to develop a framework for safety of children online. And this is especially important because a lot of the education of our children is now taking place online. Mr. President, this is but some of the action being undertaken. I can guarantee that what has not yet begun will do so shortly, as the principle of the Andrew Holness-led government is to move things as quickly as possible through the pipeline to ensure benefits to our citizenry. Mr. President, it would be remiss of me to not mention that ground has been broken for a $120 million therapeutic center for children in state care. This is a big deal because not only will issues of the psychological well-being of children be given more attention, but this signifies that we're considering the needs of all children as priority. Things are not rosy, and we do not pretend they are, Mr. President, but the relevant entities and the government are working to make them rosy. Through proper management of state resources and a determination to do things better than ever before, Ministers Williams and Morgan are steering the ship with steady and capable hands. Mr. President, earlier this week, the debate in the lower house on the issue of corporal punishment was in full swing. A corporal punishment campaign will be launched to encourage positive forms of discipline, as we cannot continue to inflict not just pain, but mental trauma on our children in the name of punishment. Mr. President, I welcome this campaign, as I'm sure you do too. The negative effects from this deep-rooted practice of corporal punishment is obvious in how our children relate to each other and as adults. As a people, our capacity to self-regulate and resolve conflicts amicably is extremely low. When and how would we learn these skills if when as children our elders draped, thumped, punched, whipped, or yelled at us for doing what is perceived as wrong? Would it not be better if other approaches were undertaken to reprimand and punish? What if we spent more time highlighting positive behaviors? What if parents were taught what behaviors to expect from children at different ages? How many times have we been sitting waiting in a space and there's a mother or a father with a 2-year-old child who is being slapped, pinched, or yelled at for not sitting quietly? It hurts my heart every time I see it. For a long time I felt anger towards these parents, but on reflection, it dawned on me that many of us grew up hearing that children should be seen and not heard. Many of us and our parents were raised this way, and so we know no differently. But Mr. President, small children should not be expected to sit still unoccupied for long periods of time. It is a matter of biology. It cannot be expected to happen. Let us run radio and TV ads to help parents to understand this concept, Mr. President. Let us help parents to understand that defiance from our children and young people should not be taken personally. In a society where egos are tied to almost everything, including parenting, we must spread the word and teach the idea that because a child is being facetious does not mean the response should be a slap in the face. How can we expect to lower the cases of domestic abuse when as youngsters we learn that those who love us most lash out at us when they are angry? In the context, as adults, what skills would one have developed to counter this idea? Mr. President, I submit here today that as a society, we must include conflict resolution skills in our schools at all levels. It can be done for the first half an hour after lunch break, 4 or 5 days per week. In addition, Mr. President, I use this platform to urge churches to include conflict resolution workshops, talks, and reflections at Sunday school, prayer meetings, youth group meetings, and all other avenues at which the word of the Lord is disseminated. Which church or institution of theology will collate and make available all scriptures of the Bible relating to positive conflict resolution? Which theatre company or department at the Edna Manley School for the Visual and Performing Arts will develop material to use for role play to show scenarios of positive conflict resolution? Which PR or marketing company will develop ads and jingles and TikTok videos to be as powerful as the two is better than too many 1980 ads? By the way, Mr. President, we need to bring back that 2 is better than too many campaign, but that discussion is for another time. Which donor agencies will fund these campaigns? Mr. President, all hands are needed on deck to help the current situation. We need to ensure an all of government, all of opposition, all of civil society, all of NGO, all of diplomatic, all of church, all of citizenry approach to quell the flames which are now burning against our children. Mr. President, before moving on with this presentation, I cannot but note of the fact that for months there has been a loud call, and rightly so, for the entertainment sector to get a chance. Why am I not hearing similar loud calls for us to do everything as citizens for our children to return to school? We know the negatives of the way they have now been forced to attend schools. Do we only pay lip service to our children and their needs? Do we really love our children? This is something for us to consider. Mr. President, the state of children and youth in Jamaica is a work in resurgence. Let us all get on board. Mr. President, the second issue I want to look at today is gender. And it is quite nuanced here in Jamaica. Our situation is fundamentally different than that which exists in many other jurisdictions. Globally, when one thinks of gender parity or gender issues, the mind turns to the needs of girls and women. I will today make my own public confession. At the time when Minister Grange announced that a male desk had been set up within the gender unit at her ministry, I felt a bit annoyed. In my mind, I grumbled about the patriarchy and rolled my eyes at least 1,000 times. I allowed the everyday toil with ensuring that women are treated fairly to cloud my mind from seeing that Jamaica has a particularly unique gender issue at play. Mr. President, I do not want to be misunderstood, so I will take the time to carefully outline my point. There is no doubt that even with Jamaica having a large number of women in leadership positions, especially within the private sector, there is still a far way to go with ensuring that women have a voice and confidence across all sectors. Within this space of the country's parliament, we can establish and move forward with the Parliamentary Women's Caucus, which I know will be activated by Minister Grange and her team in short order. This caucus will facilitate women in both houses of parliament to meet, discuss, plan and push for laws and policies to aid Jamaican women with the rights, respect and inclusion needed. Many of the issues facing our children and family would be solved if Jamaican women were more empowered. Mr. President, that is a fact. Yes, many of us are loud and fill every space we occupy. And this gives the impression that the patriarchy is not in control, but we are the same group that largely tend to defer to men. Many women endanger the lives of their children in order to put food on the table and to be able to show off among peers. There is still the idea that women forget lick, an idea held by both men and women alike. So without doubt, there is absolutely more work needed to assist the majority of Jamaican women to truly actualize. Nonetheless, Mr. President, I posit that Jamaica's more dangerous gender issue arises from the situation being faced by our boys and men and being held up across gender lines. Too large a number of our males are operating outside the halls of structured society. There are those who want to stay outside the halls, and we must work to alleviate this by systematically being inclusive for the majority as well as the privileged. On the other hand, there are those, especially among the young, who would want to operate within the main halls of society, but do not know where to begin. The only thing some of these young men know is how to act strong, even when all they need is a hug, a kind word, and a safe space to just be. Too many of our males are not doing well in school. This comes from varying factors. There is the image where real men are not nerds, and being or acting smart and intelligent is nerdy. Real men also do not wear glasses, as that is nerdy, so many boys cannot see the chalkboard due to poor eyesight, but will not say so for fear of being made to wear glasses, which leads to teasing and taunting, which then leads to sadness and low self-esteem.
I'm a real man.
Too many of our males are confused and lost given their lack of role models and the burden of being a man placed on them by society. Why do we tell little boys, aged even 3 years old, that they're mama men or that they're acting like girls? How can a child who simply needs a hug be afraid to ask or receive said hug because it would make their father or uncle upset if they dared to show the need for tenderness? Mr. President, do we need affirmative actions for boys entering universities? I am convinced we are at that point when this must be a consideration as we transition to helping our boys along their path to adulthood. The gender fight and struggle has not been about one gender outflanking the other. It has been about parity. We will have a problem if our society has a shortage of highly educated and emotionally stable males. Let us examine the graduating class of the University of the West Indies for the 2019 to 2020 school year. I want you to just put your eyes on the screen. Note that the disparities I will highlight are from a single year, but they are not an anomaly. Now, when you look at that, so we are looking at 8 different faculties at the University of the West Indies Mona campus, and only within 2 of those faculties do we have males being the majority of students. Engineering, men are 57.1%, and sports, men are 77.4%. But you have, for example, humanities and education, males are 26.1%. Law, men are 20.1%. Medical sciences, 21.9%. Science and technology, men are 38%. Social sciences, men are 31.2%. And in general, for the graduating class of 2019 to 2020, please ignore the typo there, we only had 31.6% of the graduating cohort being males. We have a problem. At the moment, our boys are being crushed, and we must act to save their future. Our country needs an educated, emotionally intelligent, and mentally healthy population of both men and women. Mr. President, I no longer roll my eyes, but instead lift my hat to the Minister for seeing the need and working with the team in the ministry to fix the problem. Mr. President, the state of males in Jamaica needs continued urgent attention. Mr. President, we are now going through what can only be termed as one of the most favored times for Jamaicans at home and abroad. It would be out of order of me to not acknowledge this season. What am I referring to? The Olympics. Our athletes have been through the ringer due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, but I am sure all will agree that they have shown nothing short of resilience. This group of professionals and their management and medical teams have endured postponements, large numbers of testing for the virus, disappointment, and now they will face empty stadiums and no roaring crowds to boost morale or stimulate performance. I know, though, in the same way I stand here assured that our ministers with responsibility for sports, the Honourable Olivia Babsy-Grange and Minister Terry Long, have done everything humanly possible to support our athletes, I am also sure that the green, yellow and black will fly high on the shoulders of some of our finest Jamaicans. Mr. President, I take this opportunity to wish all our athletes and their supporting teams all the best in Japan. Sports in Jamaica remains one of the most organized industries, even with any ills that may arise periodically. The state of sports in Jamaica is always and will remain a matter of pride. Mr. President, as I conclude, I want to turn our attention to these bits of strings in my hand. I often fiddle about when I'm bored or when I'm thinking. And as you can see, I also crochet. from time to time, so I do spend a lot of time with strings. Try as I may, though, Mr. President, this therapeutic act for me, I can't get these strings to solve problems, because problems are solved with auditing the issues, identifying solutions, and then implementing. No matter how much time I spend with strings and how many of us play with the strings, it just will not bring results for making our country better. Mr. President, Jamaica needs us as leaders of this country to rise to the occasion and be one with what is needed. Jamaica then needs us to act swiftly and sensibly, because as my grandmother says from time to time, time waits for no man. Jamaica is on a path that is strong and focused, and I beg God to continue to guide and protect us while we make our way through uncharted waters caused by the pandemic. Thank you. If it pleases you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Rodriguez Campbell. Or Campbell Rodriguez, sorry. Minister.
Mr. President, I ask that the debate on the state of the nation be suspended.
Members, you have heard the question. Members? Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Those against? Ayes have it.
Mr. President, it is now intended to take the motion related to the Microcredit Act tabled earlier. So I ask for a suspension of the standing orders to allow me to do so.
The question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the minister to take the motions, notice of which was given earlier. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Minister.
Mr. President, I don't expect this to be contentious, nor do I expect it to be particularly long-winded. The Honourable Senate may recall that the Microcredit Act was passed in the the House of Representatives on January 19th, and in this House on January 22nd, 2021. In order for the Act to become effective and the Bank of Jamaica to start the licensing and the supervision of the sector, it is necessary that a suite of regulations and rules be promulgated. These include the passage of 1. The microcredit fees regulations, 2. The microcredit requirements for grant of license regulations, and 3. The microcredit license form of applications rules. It is also critical that the rules and regulations be affirmed by the end of July 2021, based on commitment with FATF, the Financial Action Task Force. The provisions in these rules, as it relates to the microcredit license form and application rules, the provisions in these rules are as follows. Rule 2. This rule defines key terms including politically exposed persons or PEP, which means an individual specified in Regulation 7A2 and 6 of the Proceeds of Crime Money Laundering Prevention Regulations, and Regulation 6A2 and 6 of the Terrorism Prevention Reporting Entities Regulations. Ultimate beneficial owner means A. In relation to a body corporate, the individual who ultimately owns and controls the body corporate. B. In relation to an applicant for business, the individual on whose behalf the applicant for business conducts the business or one-off transaction concerned. And C. In the case of a trust, settlement, or other legal arrangement, the individual who ultimately owns or controls the trust, settlement, or other legal arrangement, as the case may be. Rule 3. This rule stipulates the form of application to operate a microcredit institution which shall be in the form set out in the schedule. B. Be accompanied by the information requested and documents specified in the schedule. C. Satisfy the requirements specified in Section 10 of the Act. And D. Contain any additional information required for the assessment of the application. Rule 4. This rule speaks to incomplete applications and its treatment. Where in the opinion of the supervisor an application is incomplete, the supervisor may, in writing, require the applicant by a specified date to A. Submit the completed application, or B. Provide the additional information and documents required for consideration of the application. Rule 4 also provides that where a request for information is made by a supervisor and information requested is not received by the date specified by the supervisor, the assessment of the application may be discontinued and the supervisor shall inform the applicant in writing of the discontinuation. The schedule. The schedule details the key information to be provided by the applicant, including background information, ownership and group structures, governance structure and arrangements, risk management and internal controls, financial strength and financial resources. Microcredit requirements for grant of licensing regulations. The provisions in these regulations are as follows. Regulation 2. The regulation defines key terms which are similar to the terms defined in the rules above. Regulation 3. This regulation sets out the requirements for grant of licenses and requires the supervisor to have regard to the following. A. The validity and sufficiency of the documents submitted in support of the application. B. The financial resources of the applicant and the sources of those resources. C. The business history of the applicant. D. Whether every substantial shareholder and officer of the applicant is a fit and proper person. And E. The suitability and adequacy of the legal, managerial, and operational structure of the applicant. And Regulation 4, in Regulation 4, this regulation sets out the requirements for grant of license of a foreign applicant, which shall be subject to A. The prior approval or non-objection from the foreign regulator in the respective jurisdiction in which the applicant is incorporated. The adequacy of the regulatory standards applied by the foreign regulator in the jurisdiction, including the powers of that regulator to share information and cooperate with the supervisor. The adequacy of the proposed systems of corporate governance, internal controls of the applicant, risk management systems and policies, including the risks of its services being used to commit or facilitate a financial crime, and D. Such other matters and information as the supervisor considers appropriate. Regulation 5. This regulation speaks to the refusal to grant a license and states that a license shall not be granted to a company having its head office outside of Jamaica unless the company, in relation to the operations of the local branch of the company, A. establishes a principal office in Jamaica, and B. designates an officer of the company as the authorized agent of the company, and another officer to act as the alternate authorized agent. The microcredit fees regulations. The provisions in these regulations are as follows. Regulation 2. This regulation defines key terms including fee base, which means the value of total gross loans held at the end of the financial year, calculated by reference to the values prescribed in the financial report submitted to the Bank at the end of the financial year. Startup refers to a business that offers microcredit service, which has been in operation for no longer than 1 year, either before or after the commencement date. Regulation 3. This regulation states the license fee payable on the grant of a license to operate a microcredit institution, which is a sum equivalent to $10,000 for the first $10 million of the fee base and an additional $1,000 each for each additional $10 million or part thereof. Regulation 3 also makes provision for a startup where the fee for the grant of a license to operate a microcredit institution shall be only $10,000. Regulation 4. The regulation states the annual fee payable on or before each anniversary of the grant of a license shall be the same as in Regulation 3. Regulation 5. This regulation states the fees be payable for the reinstatement of a license which was suspended shall be 50% of the licensing fee specified in Regulation 3. Regulation 6 states that states the fee for the replacement of a license that is lost, defaced, or destroyed shall be 10% of the licensing fee specified in Regulation 3. However, such fee shall not be less than $5,000. Regulation 7. This states the fee for the change of registered name of licensee shall be $5,000. In conclusion, Mr. President, the Honourable Senate should note that the microcredit institutions play an important role in facilitating the provision of credit to individuals and micro, small and medium enterprises, Mr. President. As such, in order to improve the monitoring of the industry, promote greater transparency, protection of consumers, and reduction in risks of the industry being used as a vehicle to facilitate money laundering, it is critical that the Act becomes effective and operational. In order for the commencement of oversight of the microcredit institutions, it is necessary that this suite of regulations and rules be affirmed in both houses. I hereby request that the Honourable Senate affirms these regulations and rules so that we may do so. In closing, Mr. President, I wish to thank colleagues for taking the suite of regulations with short notice, but for their understanding. Thank you.
Senator Bunting. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's only quite recently we debated and passed the Microcredit Act a few months ago. And the regulations really is just putting in the administrative support to operationalize that act. The trend of increasing oversight, regulation, transparency, and through that discouraging money laundering, terrorism financing, and other illicit activities is global, and it is something that is good for us. We know when it comes to microcredit institutions, sometimes you're speaking about very small operations, and therefore you don't want to, or you have to try and balance making it not too onerous from a bureaucratic point of view, but still achieving the objectives that the minister summarized in his closing paragraph. The opposition supported the Microcredit Act when it was being debated here in the upper house, and we support the regulations. We observe, invariably we always seem to be coming up against the deadlines, passing it the week before the hard deadlines to meet the FATF requirements. And we shouldn't be surprised, we would have known these. But we can only hope that as we go along, we'll improve our scheduling and planning and forecasting and increase resources for drafting so that we're not always presented with something that has to be passed the same day. But it's not complicated, it's not controversial, so we have no problem accommodating the government at this time. I will just close by saying that as a shareholder of a financial institution that has subsidiaries regulated right across the Caribbean, in Bermuda, in Cayman, in Panama, in St. Lucia, and other jurisdictions, this is something you cannot escape. In fact, I oftentimes feel that these regulators know more about me than my doctor because they want to examine your life from every part and every angle. But it is inevitable. That is where we're going. And I think the transparency is a good thing. It's a good thing for not just the customers, the other stakeholders, the economy generally, as people have better information about what is taking place. And therefore, Mr. President, we have no problem supporting these regulations.
Minister.
Mr. President, I wish to thank the well, I would say contributions, but Senator Bunting for his contribution to the debate. In closing, just... Sorry? I do intend
Senator
to...
Brown,
I do intend to
Minister,
conclude.
hold a second. Sure. You seem to have forgotten that there's a special day today. So, remember, Senator Morris will be taking persons elsewhere. All right.
That is indeed so, Mr. President. But I do thank members on both sides for their expressed support even before we vote. This is indeed the final step in operationalizing the act that we would have passed earlier this year, and an act that would have seen support from both sides in both houses for the reasons outlined both by myself and Senator Bunting. It is the way of the world. It is where we're going. And quite frankly, it is also a critical step and tool even in our crime fight, as this is the issue of money laundering is nothing to be taken lightly, and something that the country needs to get itself in line with all international standards. And because of the problems we've had with organized crime, may even have to go further over time as we look to take illicit money out of the system. Mr. President, I don't think the drafters would disagree with Senator Bunting that more resources are needed in that area, and I certainly support those resources once being made available to them. I think it will bring our governance arrangements faster into the 21st century, and that is needed. And to be honest, as a system and on both sides, we should have seen when we were dealing with the IMF, the suite of legislative changes that had to come under the IMF arrangement. I mean, I recall I wasn't in the Senate at the time, I used to follow the debates, and I recall some very lengthy bills coming on the day that they were needed. And much as the patriotic, no, that is correct. I can remind you, my birthday brother. But yes, they did come some very lengthy bills sometimes right in the nick of time, and we should have made the adjustments as a country at that time. But point taken and agreed, Senator Bunting. So with that, I think this is good for Jamaica, and I ask, Mr. President, that the regulations be approved. Thank you.
We have 3 resolutions, and the question is that the resolutions be taken together and be approved. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. President, it is not intended to do any further business today, but before I ask for the suspension of the sitting for a date to be fixed, I would like to use the opportunity, with your leave, just to extend a warm greeting and a thought to the staff who give us such support from the Parliament, to those who secure us by way of the constabulary force members who are here, because this is the last sitting before the summer break. So I hope all members on both sides and the members of the staff and all who give support to this Parliament enjoy that break, use it to regenerate and replenish their spirit and their energy, and do so safely. And we wish everyone well. I also do so on behalf of Leader of Government Business, who is unable to be with us today, extend her greetings and well wishes to all members of the Senate and indeed all members of the staff at Gordon House. So thank you, Mr. President. With that said, Mr. President, I ask, certainly, Senator Bunting.
Some technical difficulties there. With your indulgence, Mr. President, I'd just like to associate myself and the opposition with those remarks, particularly to use the opportunity to extend our thanks to the staff and all those who support us at Parliament, and to encourage them to get some rest and recreation during the emancipation period, and that all of us at this time when variants are emerging and we see our positivity rates increasing, to make an extra effort to be safe during the summer break. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Bunting. And Mr. President, with that, I ask that the sitting be suspended for a date to be fixed.
Question is that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The Senate stands adjourned.